We have House Homeland Security Chairman Michael McCall with us right now. These latest orders, sir, what do you, the rebuilding of the armed services I can see, but what's going to cause some controversy among some is, what does he mean by extreme vetting of refugees? What do you think changes now versus before he signed that order?
Well, I think it's a safer day for America. With one stroke of a pen, he's closed off more terror pathways than the past 8 years under President Obama. This is nothing really new. It's something Mayor Rudy Giuliani and I briefed the president on during the campaign, the extreme vetting memo that was produced by Giuliani, myself, Judge Mukasey, that talks about the high threat areas overseas and then ramping up the vetting process to make sure we don't have any more San Bernardinos in this country, Chattanoogas, Orlandos, all these areas where we've seen people come in to the United States and perpetrate terror attacks. I think I applaud the president for doing this. And also, one thing that I don't think he mentioned, will suspend the refugee program, in particular the Syrian refugee program, indefinitely. I think that's a very significant campaign promise that he has followed through with today. I just talked to General Kelly right before this interview about this executive order, and I will be working with the Secretary in the Congress to help implement these executive orders.
Does it mean, Chairman, that if you have, or you come from a country where there have been a lot of terrorist incidents, that we would go slow on allowing you to come here? Or is it just, you know, terror hotbeds?
These are basically 7 terror hotspot countries. Will be denied. Every visa application will be suspended for 30 days until the DNI and the Secretary of Homeland Security can sit down with the FBI as well to determine, you know, this vetting process as to who are we letting into this country. We see in the past we haven't even used social media to determine who we're letting into this country. So we're talking about countries like Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, and Libya, which all have a very high level of ISIS figures present in those countries that could potentially get into our country through the visa process. And so I think this will strengthen our homeland security, and I really applaud the president for what he's doing.
Chairman, as you know, there's been a back and forth and some tension between ourselves and the Mexican government over this wall that the president wants to build and insists that the Mexicans will pay for it. And he made a call himself to the Mexican president today, spoke for upwards of an hour. I don't know what the result of that call was, but to try maybe to make nice, I don't know how you would describe it, but that he, in a later interview with the Christian Broadcasting Network, said that, you know, I'm still for either a tax, some sort of a tariff, without calling it a tariff, on goods coming in from Mexico to pay for this thing. Are you open to that? Do you think that's doable?
You know, we're looking at creative ways to pay for this. We will have a border emergency spending bill in the Congress coming up in the next couple of months. I'll be working with Secretary Kelly on what is the wall going to look like, the fencing, aviation technology assets, but also how much is it going to cost and how are we going to pay for this. On the front end, we will be appropriating those dollars out of the Congress. On the back end, we're looking at some creative ideas like the border adjustable tax rate, which right now we tax exports, but not imports, so we really punish American manufacturers.
Sir, I mean, I hear the 20% figure come up a lot, or was it arbitrary, but something like that?
I think that it's a bit arbitrary, and I think it's a little early to be, I mean, we're looking at all sorts of ideas in the Congress, but again, right now we currently tax exports and not imports, and we punish American manufacturers. I think it's very consistent with the Trump administration's theme here to protect America first. And so we're looking at this idea, Paul Ryan is looking at it in terms of a revenue enhancer that would bring, actually the number I was told was about $1 trillion investment in the United States. So if that is a way that the president can say Mexico help pay for the wall, then that may not be a bad idea.
All right. Chairman, thank you. Michael McCall, Republican, Texas, House Homeland Security Committee Chairman.
collapse here. All right. In the Impact segment tonight, there's a group called the Clarion Project, which is dedicated to exposing the dangers of Islamic extremism. Recently, we asked Clarion to pinpoint for us 5 dangerous situations here in the USA. With us, Ryan Morrow, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. So you have many, many more than this, but we picked the top 5 that I think will be of interest. The first one is in Hancock, New York, about 145 miles northwest of Manhattan. What's going up in Hancock?
There's actually a place there called Islamburg. They have a sign that says, "Welcome to Islamburg." It's about a 60, 70-acre large compound, and it's the headquarters for a group called Muslims of the Americas that follows a radical cleric in Pakistan. The videotape that's on the screen is something that was given to me by law enforcement, showing them engaging in guerrilla warfare training at that Islamburg compound.
Okay, so Islamburg, upstate New York, they have weapons. It's private property.
Right.
All right, they're training on the property. Can the authorities do anything about it?
Beyond monitoring them, no, because they're not listed as a foreign terrorist organization. FBI documents that we've obtained do show that they consider them a threat, but because they don't have that designation, they're able to operate in the U.S. and we have a dozen.
Do you know how many people are up at this compound?
That specific one, no, but the estimates of the number of members that this group has across the country, they say they have 22 of these places across the country, is somewhere around 3,000.
Training ground. Wow. All right, now we have the Dar el Hara Islamic Center in Falls Church, Virginia. What's going on there?
Right, a history of radical leadership over there. Anwar al-Awlaki used to be their imam before he went over and he joined Al-Qaeda. And there was even videotape that was taken of the current imam speaking recently in Virginia, where he specifically said that Muslims should be first in line to get the arms for jihad.
All right, so at this center in Falls Church, there's an imam there presently.
Right.
Who wants to get arms for the jihad.
He preaches that that is a requirement upon Muslims.
Wow. All right, the third one is one I mentioned last night in Brooklyn, New York, with John Stossel. It's the Masjid at-Taqwa Mosque. What's going on here?
That's led by Suraj Wahaj, one of the most radical imams in the country, yet he manages to be a rock star, speaking at Muslim events across the country, and even college campuses.
He's going to be in Dallas this weekend in Garland, Texas, for a big conference, and I brought that up to the imam we had on last night, who didn't seem to think this guy was so radical.
He didn't address that. He was addressing the issue of whether he's been prosecuted, which is a whole nother thing. If you look at what he's been preaching, it's sheer anti-Americanism, turning America into a caliphate, and his mosque was even suing the NYPD because they were conducting surveillance on it.
That's right, that de Blasio pulled off. So this is a bad hombre, as I said to Sasa last night. Then there's another one in New York City. This is in Jamaica, Queens, the Islamic Circle of North America. What's this all about?
Right, this is a major organization with origins in Pakistan, with an Islamist group over there. Polls show that only about 2% of Muslim Americans say that this group represents them, but they're one of the most well-organized there. One of the leaders was actually indicted on war crimes in Bangladesh, and we have a copy of one of their teaching guides that tells Muslims to engage in deception in order to advance the jihadist cause and to implement Sharia governance.
All right, then this comes out of Queens, right? This out of this mosque. This is the
that's
center.
the headquarters.
That's
yes.
the headquarters. All right, and finally, and this is the most controversial one, you have CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, and they've been on this program. They do a lot of media. And what are you saying, that they're a dangerous group?
Yes, they are basically a political influence operation of the Muslim Brotherhood, according to the Justice Department, not according to me. They specifically listed CARE as an entity of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, specifically its Palestine Committee that was secretly set up to advance the Hamas agenda. And the FBI wiretapped their leaders in 1993, talking about setting up CARE so that they could influence the media in their direction.
Well, and that's what they do. They come out and they say, look, we're moderates and we just want to give you our point of view. But you say that they're directly tied into terrorist groups?
Into the Muslim Brotherhood, yes.
Which is a terrorist group.
Right, and Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay. Now, final question is, this is pretty frightening stuff, but you would assume the FBI knows about all of this, if you know about it, and
Sure.
the Justice Department is surveilling them and have them under control. And in a free and open society, this is the rest of them that we didn't talk about. This is the map that all of these have radical Muslim mosques or operations in all of those towns. And it's amazing. Look at them. Sacramento, outside of L.A., Pittsburgh, Chicago, on and on. So my question is, Should Americans be concerned, or is this under control?
It can't be under control just through monitoring them. And again, when it comes back to the issue of the ideology, which President Obama refuses to recognize,
yes,
that's the problem here. It's not just about the person that's setting off the bomb. It's about the overall ideology that combines mosque and state, that justifies jihad anywhere, and we need Muslim leaders to step up and fight against those interpretations. The most positive news I've seen is the poll that showed that these organizations have so little support among Muslim Americans.
Right. All right. Very interesting, Mr. Moreau. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Directly ahead, President Obama.
Allah told Rasulullah to tell the mushrikeen of Quraysh the story of Noor in Surah Yunus, verse 71, when Allah said what? Allah said, and recite to them the news of Noor, when he said to his people, "O my people, if my residence amongst you, if my living amongst you, and my reminding you of the verses of Allah, my calling you to Tawheed has become burdensome upon you, then I put my trust in Allah. So resolve your plan upon me, and call all of your associates. Call all of your associates, and do not let your plan be obscure to you, and give me no respite. And give me no respite." This is what Allah commanded Rasulullah to say to the mushrikeen of Quraysh. To say to them, in other words, what? In other words, if you find me living amongst you, so much of an offense that we call you to Tawheed, then we don't care what you think. And we don't fear you. We don't care what you think. So give us no respite. Do what you're going to do. Whatever you plan to do, try and do it. Because we don't fear you. We don't fear you. And you've got nothing to offer. You've got nothing to offer as an alternative. You've got nothing to offer us as an alternative. So we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop calling people to Tawheed just because you said so. We're not going to stop calling people towards the Sharia. We're not going to stop calling for the domination of Islam. We're not going to stop these things. And this is exactly what Prophet Hud said to his people in Surah Hud verses 54 and 55. When he said what? He said, "Anni bari'un mimma tushrikuna min duni fa'biduni jami'a thumma la tunzilun." That's what he said to them. He said, "I make bara from you and your shirk. I make bara from you and your shirk. So all of you gather against me and give me no respite. And give me no respite." And after that, what did he say? He said, "Inni tawakkaltu ala Allahi Rabbi wa Rabbukum." That I shall put my trust in Allah, my Lord and your Lord. My Lord and your Lord. So we say the same thing to all of these people. To all these dogs that want to bark. All of these dogs that want to bark. They want to say Khariji, Khariji, Jahil, Jahil. You don't speak Arabic. You don't speak Arabic. Carry on saying that. In fact, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, stand in front of Allah. When Allah questions you why you remain silent and why you upon your batil, tell Allah to lie you because you spoke Arabic. Tell Allah to give you a blind because you spoke Arabic. Tell Him to enter you into Jannah because you spoke Arabic. And see what happens then. And see what happens then. So we tell all of you, and these cowards that want to talk greasy, they want to talk rubbish, they want to slander man. When you see man, you want to take selfies. When you see man on road, you want to take selfies because you're too much of a coward. We say to all of you, you find it offensive that we live amongst you, but try and stop us. Try and stop us if you can. Because wallahi, we'll never stop. We'll never stop for you. And we don't fear you. And we're going to carry on calling to Tawheed, whether you like it or not.
I have a special immigration visa in my passport, me and my family, because I work with the U.S. government. I support the U.S. government from the other side of the war. But when I came here, they said no, and they treat me as I break the rules or do something wrong. I surprised me.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. Build the wall, we'll tear it down. Build the wall, we'll tear it down. Build the wall, we'll tear it down. Build the wall, we'll tear it down.
A number of people with valid visas, they got on board a plane before the executive order was issued, and when they got off the plane here, they were detained. Customs and Border Protection people here are acting pursuant to the guidance that they've gotten from Washington, which apparently is not very clear guidance, and they've asked for further guidance from Washington, and they're working short-staffed since it's Saturday to give them that guidance as to whether the president's executive order is to be held to supersede those visas, whether they should be admitted or not. Meanwhile, they're being held here.
No fascist USA. Hey, hey, JFK. No fascist USA. Hey, hey, JFK. No fascist USA. No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate, no fear. Somalians are welcome here. No hate, no fear. No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate.
We're asking for access to the head of the Customs and Bureau, the Customs and Border Protection here, to find out why these refugees are being, number one, why they're being detained, number two, why they're being denied access to their attorneys.
These are two members of Congress.
I have clients that are currently being detained in JFK. We believe what this detention is unconstitutional and unlawful. The executive order that was released Thursday evening is unconstitutional, and my organization, as well as other organizations, are currently working on lawsuits to fight these illegal actions.
Refugees are welcome here. Build bridges, not walls. Build bridges, not walls. Build bridges, not walls.
Judge blocks Trump order on refugees amid chaos and outcry worldwide. Washington. A federal judge in Brooklyn came to the aid of scores of refugees and others who were trapped at airports across the United States on Saturday after an executive order signed by President Trump, which sought to keep many foreigners from entering the country, led to chaotic scenes across the globe. The judge's ruling blocked part of the president's actions, preventing the government from deporting some arrivals who found themselves ensnared by the presidential order. But it stopped short of letting them into the country or issuing a broader ruling on the constitutionality of Mr. Trump's actions. The high-stakes legal case played out on Saturday amid global turmoil, as the executive order signed by the president slammed shut the borders of the United States for an Iranian scientist headed to a lab in Massachusetts, a Syrian refugee family headed to a new life in Ohio, and countless others across the world. The president's order, enacted with the stroke of a pen at 4:42 p.m. Friday, suspended entry of all refugees to the United States for 120 days, barred Syrian refugees indefinitely, and blocked entry into the United States for 90 days for citizens of 7 predominantly Muslim countries: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. The Department of Homeland Security said that the order also barred green card holders from those countries from re-entering the United States. In a briefing for reporters, White House officials said that green card holders from the 7 affected countries who are outside the United States would need a case-by-case waiver to return. Mr. Trump, in office just a week, found himself accused of constitutional and legal overreach by 2 Iraqi immigrants, defended by the American Civil Liberties Union. Meanwhile, large crowds of protesters turned out at airports around the country to denounce Mr. Trump's ban on the entry of refugees and people from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. Lawyers who sued the government to block the White House order said the judge's decision could affect an estimated 100 to 200 people who were detained upon arrival at American airports. Judge N.M. Donnelly of Federal District Court in Brooklyn, who was nominated by former President Barack Obama, ruled just before 9 p.m. that implementing Mr. Trump's order by sending the travelers home could cause them irreparable harm. She said the government was enjoined and restrained from, in any manner and by any means, removing individuals who had arrived in the United States with valid visas or refugee status. The ruling does not appear to force the administration to let in people otherwise blocked by Mr. Trump's order who have not yet traveled to the United States. The judge's one-page ruling came swiftly after lawyers for the ACLU testified in her courtroom that one of the people detained at an airport was being put on a plane to be deported back to Syria at that very moment. A government lawyer, Gisela A. Westwater, who spoke to the court by phone from Washington, said she simply did not know. Hundreds of people waited outside of the courthouse chanting, "Set them free," as lawyers made their case. When the crowd learned that Judge Donnelly had ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, a rousing cheer went up in the crowd. Minutes after the judge's ruling in New York City, another judge, Leonie M. Brinkema of Federal District Court in Virginia, issued a temporary restraining order for a week to block the removal of any green card holders being detained at Dulles International Airport. In a statement released early Sunday morning, the Department of Homeland Security said it would continue to enforce all of the president's executive orders, even while complying with judicial decisions. Prohibited travel will remain prohibited, the department said in a statement, adding that the directive was a first step towards re-establishing control over America's borders and national security. Around the nation, security personnel at major international airports had new rules to follow, though the application of the order appeared chaotic and uneven. Humanitarian organizations delivered the bad news to overseas families that had overcome the bureaucratic hurdles previously in place and were set to travel. And refugees already on flights when the order was signed on Friday found themselves detained upon arrival. "We've gotten reports of people being detained all over the country," said Becca Heller, the director of the International Refugee Assistance Project. "They're literally pouring in by the minute." Earlier in the day, at the White House, Mr. Trump shrugged off the sense of anxiety and disarray, suggesting that there had been an orderly rollout. "It's not a Muslim ban, but we were totally prepared," he said. "It's working out very nicely. You see it at the airports, you see it all over." But to many, the government hardly seemed prepared for the upheaval that Mr. Trump's actions put into motion. There were numerous reports of students attending American universities who were blocked from returning to the United States from visits abroad. One student said in a Twitter post that he would be unable to study at Yale. Another who attends the Massachusetts Institute of Technology was refused permission to board a plane. A Sudanese graduate student at Stanford University was blocked for hours from entering the country. Human rights groups reported that legal permanent residents of the United States who hold green cards were being stopped in foreign airports as they sought to return from funerals, vacations or study abroad. There was widespread condemnation of the order, from religious leaders, business executives, academics, political leaders, and others. Mr. Trump's supporters offered praise, calling it a necessary step on behalf of the nation's security. Homeland Security officials said on Saturday night that 109 people who were already in transit to the United States when the order was signed were denied access, 173 were stopped before boarding planes heading to America. 81 people who were stopped were eventually given waivers to enter the United States, officials said. Legal residents who have a green card and are currently in the United States should meet with a consular officer before leaving the country, a White House official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, told reporters. Officials did not clarify the criteria that would qualify someone for a waiver, other than that it would be granted in the national interest. But the week-old administration appeared to be implementing the order chaotically, with agencies and officials around the globe interpreting it in different ways. The Stanford student, Nisrin Omer, a legal permanent resident, said she was held at Kennedy International Airport in New York for about 5 hours but was eventually allowed to leave the airport. Others who were detained appeared to be still in custody or sent back to their home countries. White House aides claimed on Saturday that there had been consultations with State Department and Homeland Security officials about carrying out the order. "Everyone who needed to know was informed," one aide said. But that assertion was denied by multiple officials with knowledge of the interactions, including 2 officials at the State Department. Leaders of Customs and Border Protection and of Citizenship and Immigration Services, the two agencies most directly affected by the order, were on a telephone briefing on the new policy even as Mr. Trump signed it on Friday, two officials said. The A.C.L.U.S. legal case began with two Iraqis detained at Kennedy Airport, the named plaintiffs in the case. One was en route to reunite with his wife and son in Texas. The other had served alongside Americans in Iraq for a decade. Shortly after noon on Saturday, Hamid Khalid Darwish, an interpreter who worked for more than a decade on behalf of the United States government in Iraq, was released. After nearly 19 hours of detention, Mr. Darwish began to cry as he spoke to reporters, putting his hands behind his back and miming handcuffs. "What I do for this country?" "They put the cuffs on," Mr. Darwish said. "You know how many soldiers I touch by this hand." The other man the lawyers are representing, Haider Samir Abdulkhalik al-Sha'i, who was en route to Houston, was released Saturday night. Before the two men were released, one of the lawyers, Mark Doss, a supervising attorney at the International Refugee Assistance Project, asked an official, "Who is the person we need to talk to?" "Call Mr. Trump," said the official, who declined to identify himself. While the judge's ruling means that none of the detainees will be sent back immediately, lawyers for the plaintiffs in the case expressed concern that all those at the airports would now be put in detention, pending a resolution of the case. The White House said the restrictions would protect the United States from foreign nationals entering from countries compromised by terrorism and allow the administration time to put in place a more rigorous vetting process. But critics condemned Mr. Trump over the collateral damage on people who had no sinister intentions in trying to come to the United States. Peaceful protests began forming Saturday afternoon at Kennedy Airport, where 9 travelers had been detained upon arrival at Terminal 7 and 2 others at Terminal 4, an airport official said. Similar scenes were playing out at other airports across the nation. An official message to all American diplomatic posts around the world provided instructions about how to treat people from the countries affected, effective immediately, halt interviewing and cease issuance and printing of visas to the United States. Internationally, confusion turned to panic as travelers found themselves unable to board flights bound for the United States. In Dubai and Istanbul, airport and immigration officials turned passengers away at boarding gates and, in at least one case, ejected a family from a flight it had boarded. Said Sohail Sidi Saravi, a promising young Iranian scientist, had been scheduled to travel in the coming days to Boston, where he had been awarded a fellowship to study cardiovascular medicine at Harvard, according to Thomas Michel, the professor who was to supervise the research fellowship. But Professor Michel said the visas for the student and his wife had been indefinitely suspended. This outstanding young scientist has enormous potential to make contributions that will improve our understanding of heart disease, and he has already been thoroughly vetted, Professor Michel wrote to the New York Times. A Syrian family of 6 who have been living in a Turkish refugee camp since fleeing their home in 2014 had been scheduled to arrive on Tuesday in Cleveland. Instead, the family's trip has been called off. "Everyone is just so heartbroken, so angry, so sad," said Danielle Drake, the community manager for U.S. Together, an agency that resettles refugees. A Christian family of 6 from Syria said in an email to Representative Charlie Dent, Republican of Pennsylvania, that they were being detained on Saturday morning at Philadelphia International Airport despite having legal paperwork, green cards, and visas that had been approved. In the case of the 2 Iraqis held at Kennedy Airport, the legal filings by his lawyers say that Mr. Darwish was granted a special immigrant visa on January 20, the same day Mr. Trump was sworn in as president. A husband and father of 3, Mr. Darwish arrived at Kennedy Airport with his family. Mr. Darwish's wife and children made it through passport control and customs, but agents of Customs and Border Protection detained him. In Istanbul, during a stopover on Saturday, passengers reported that security officers had entered a plane after everyone had boarded and ordered a young Iranian woman and her family to leave the aircraft. Iranian green card holders who live in the United States were blindsided by the decree while on vacation in Iran, finding themselves in a legal limbo and unsure whether they would be able to return to America. "How do I get back home now?" said Daria Zialia, a green card holder who was visiting family in Iran. He had rented a house and leased a car, and would be eligible for citizenship in November. "What about my job? If I can't go back soon, I'll lose everything."